Hello everyone and welcome to this month's General Election Opinion Poll Tracker video. So we've been doing these since the summer. Every month we have a look at the previous month's opinion polls in terms of voting intention and approval ratings and disapproval ratings for the various leaders, the Prime Minister and also leader of the opposition. And we show you what's happening in terms of government approval and disapproval as well via YouGov's tracker. So yeah, this is the opinion poll tracker video for October. We'll give you the latest general election prediction from Electoral Calculus for the opinion polls conducted during September, and then we'll have a look at those opinion polls in a moment. If you're enjoying the tracker videos on the channel, then please like, share, subscribe. They're getting, quite a few views, so I think they're pretty popular. We'll carry on doing these every month if you want to see them. And who knows, when we get to general election, maybe these videos will become a little bit more regular. Maybe do them once a week or even every day during the election campaign itself. We'll see, but for the time being, they'll stay once a month, and say monthly, and we'll see how things go. Right, okay, so let's go to Electoral Calculus then and see the latest prediction. So this is their prediction for October. Here we go. So the prediction is suggesting that there is going to be a Conservative majority of 20 seats at the next general election. Now, you'll remember that what's happened since we started doing these monthly videos back in the summer is that every month there's been a decline in the Conservative predicted majority. So we started off, I think the first video we did was in June. We started off in June with a predicted Conservative majority of around sort of 60, 70 seats. I think it might have even been a little bit more than that. And as we've gone along, each month it's reduced and reduced. Last month we had a predicted Conservative majority of 18. So this month actually arrests the decline in the predicted Conservative majority. It's actually up to basically no change within the margin of error, but the predicted Conservative majority is up to on last month from 18 to 20. So that's like the broad headline number. So we'll just very quickly go through the data on that then, and I'll remove the webcam just for the time being. So these are the various columns for the parties. Just here we've got the Conservative parties there: Labour, Liberal Democrat, Reform, Green, SNP, Plaid, and then we come down to others like DUP, Sinn Féin, SDLP, Alliance, for example. This is the column showing the predicted, showing the 2019 vote share for the various parties and the 2019 seats. And then we have the predicted vote share just here, and the range of seat possibilities just there. So you see in 2019, December 12, 2019, general election saw the Conservatives getting basically 45% of the vote, their biggest vote share since the 1970 general election. Labour was on 33% of the vote, which actually is quite a bit up on the 27% they achieved in 1983. Liberal Democrats were on basically 12%, 7.8%, and Reform or Brexit Party, as it was then, on 2.1%, Greens on 2.8%, and general election the SNP were on 4%, Plaid were on 0.5%, others were on 1.1%. And so that gave the Conservatives 365 seats, their biggest seat share since the night, and also biggest majority since 1987 general election. Labour were down on 203 seats, their worst performance in terms of, not in terms of vote share, but in terms of seats, their worst performance since 1935 general election. The Liberal Democrats had 11 seats. Brexit, as it was then, had 0 seats. The Greens had just 1 seat. And the SNP had 48 seats. Plaid had 4. So the current vote share, predicted vote share for the next general election is Conservatives on 40.3%. So they're down, about around 5%, down quite significantly on 2019, but still holding around 40%. Labour just up ever so slightly from 33 to 34%. So there is a very slight swing, you know, from Conservative to Labour, but not enough to deprive the Conservatives of a majority on the central prediction. Liberal Democrats actually down a little bit from 11% to 9%. Reform, as it is now, down a little bit to 1.3%. Greens up quite significantly at 5.9%, and you do have to, so basically 6%, you have to wonder whether the Greens would actually poll that in a general election, and quite a bit of that will go back to Labour, actually. So it is something to bear in mind about the Labour score. You would probably expect, you know, quite a bit of that Green score to go back to Labour. Some of it might be distributed with the Liberal Democrats as well, and of course north of the border some of it might go to the SNP, and in Wales some of it might go to Plaid as well. SNP on 4.3%, you know, very little change from 2019, but then 2019 they went basically as high as they could get anyway, and Plaid, you know, no change there. Now the predicted seat outcome on this projection shows the Conservatives on 335 seats, so yes, they are above the 326 that they need to get a bare overall majority. Labour up a little bit, 230, but still really struggling. I mean, they scored 203 in 2019 there, up to 230 seats of this projection, but that is still very poor, really, historically, for Labour. Liberal Democrats actually losing some seats, going from 11 to 7. Again, that's probably quite unlikely in a general election, I would have thought. Greens don't really move, although they are up significantly on 2019 on the projection. You know, they stay where they are on 1, and that is the way first past the post affects smaller parties, of course. SNP go up to 55 seats, so that's basically a clean sweep of Scotland on this projection for the SNP. And Plaid on 4%, they don't really move. Others, again, not really moving there on 0. There is a margin of error with that, of course. So on the high end, Conservatives on this prediction could get 408 seats, but conversely they could be as low as 245. Labour could get to 315 on their best day, you know, within the margin of error, but that still leaves them short. Even on their best day, Labour is still short of an overall majority. On their very best performance within the margin of error, they are still short of a 326 they need, you know, to get a majority. However, at 315 they would be able to form a government, because they would do deals with probably SNP, maybe Liberal Democrats, and Greens and so on. On their worst day, Labour would go down to 163 on this projection. That would take them within the margin of error. That would take them down to their lowest seat share since 1918. On their best day, Liberal Democrats could go up to 28 seats, but could go as low as 4 seats. The best the Greens get, you know, within the margin of error on their very best day, is just up 1 more to 2 seats. The SNP could get a full clean sweep on their best day, which is to 56. That will be all the seats in Scotland. The 55 in the central projection leaves them just 1 short of every single seat. Plaid could go up to 5, could go as low as 1. SNP could go as low as 37. On their worst day. But that is still, you know, well over half the seats in Scotland. So, yeah, that's how the central projection is looking. Let's have a look at how the opinion polls actually look, but that projection is based on. This is all of them from Wikipedia. So, the main talking point, I think, is going to be the YouGov that did give Labour a lead, which is the first time Labour has had a lead for a very, very long time. I have to go back to last winter, I think, maybe even further back than that, for the last time that Labour actually led an opinion poll, but they did lead one opinion poll during September. So this is all the opinion polls in September. There's 21 of them from 2nd to 3rd of September, just here with Opinium, all the way up 29th of September with Survation just there. So you see, but most of the polls were still showing a Conservative lead in those polls. You see that there is a lot of blue here. We did get that one poll, which is the YouGov Times poll, just here. That was from the 8th and the 9th of September, that gave Labour a lead. So that YouGov poll took the Conservatives down to 33%, and Labour were on 35% of the vote in that opinion poll, which gave Labour an overall lead of 2%. And so you see that little bit of red showing up there. There was also an opinion poll that was conducted just after that on the 9th to the 11th of September for the Observer that showed a tie between Labour and Conservative. Had Conservative on 38%, Labour on 38% as well, and that gave the two parties a tie. So maybe around that period, somewhere around the beginning of September, maybe something did happen, and perhaps very briefly Labour did go into the lead, but it wasn't sustained through the rest of September. See, the rest of the opinion polls conducted during September showed Conservative leads, quite narrow leads through the middle part of the month. So Redfield Wilton has a 4% lead, Survation has a 4% lead, Panel Base has a 4% Conservative lead, Opinium, again just there for the Observer, that one just has a 3% Labour lead, Conservatives on 40, Labour on 37%. Towards the end of the month, maybe the Conservative lead started to widen a little bit, possibly from around here onwards. This YouGov poll has the Conservatives back with a 7% lead, and then we see a 6% lead there with Repeal Wilson. YouGov again showing an 8% Conservative lead, and then Survation in with a 5% Conservative lead. So maybe towards the end of September, the Conservative lead began to open up a little bit. But I think for a while, around the early part of September, around that second week of September, possibly, the polls did narrow enough to, within margin of error anyway, which is around 3%, give Labour that one lead, but not sustained. That does look like a little bit of an outlier, but I'm not sure it necessarily was an outlier, because we also have the opinion poll that gave a tie between Labour and Conservative. But you see, solidly, really, through most of September, the Conservatives still held on to their lead, albeit has narrowed from where it was in the summer, and that's why we see that the central projection at Electoral Calculus here has gone from like 60 seats to 20 over the past 3 or 4 months. This is how Boris Johnson's approval and disapproval rating is looking. So it is in the red. Boris is negative, or was negative, during September in all polls, from the first one from the 2nd to the 3rd of September, which was Opinium, and they were asking whether people approved or disapproved of Boris Johnson. So we have 35% approval and 45% disapproval, giving Boris a net negative rating of -10. And see, that is indicative of most of the polls, or all polls during September. They were all negative to varying degrees, but most narrow one was Repeal Wilton Mayor, 13th of September, approved, disapproved, 38% approved, 42% disapproved, and so a negative rating overall of just -4, which isn't too bad at all, really, for a sitting Prime Minister. We have Ipsos MORI, who've been doing this for many years. They have a very, very long history, of asking whether people are satisfied or dissatisfied with the Prime Ministers of the day and their respective party leaders. They show Boris negative at -12 there, so quite significantly negative with Ipsos MORI during September. 39% were satisfied with him, 41% were dissatisfied with him. That's about as negative as he was, although there is an opinion just here that has him at -13. And there's also this opinion just here that had him at -17. That's really quite significantly negative. 32% approval, 49% disapproval. So Boris is clearly in a more unpopular situation at the moment. Boris Johnson is clearly going through a more unpopular phase. But now look at Keir Starmer's approval and disapproval, and it's even worse, and this has been consistently the case, throughout the past few months. We've been seeing this every month when we've been doing these videos. So, for example, again, Keir Starmer is completely in the red, in the negative, in all polls during September. And the key takeaway is that he is more negative. His numbers are more negative than Boris Johnson's are. So, for example, we've got Ipsos MORI here. Again, this is the poll from the 17th, 23rd of September with satisfied, dissatisfied. So 25% were satisfied with Sir Keir Starmer in September in Ipsos MORI's poll, but 50% were dissatisfied with him, giving him a net negative rating of minus 25, and compare that to Boris Johnson's, whose net negative rating, although actually very similar in terms of dissatisfied, 50 to 51%, but overall nowhere near as negative. Minus 12 is his overall negative rating during September. Is Boris Johnson's overall negative rating, it's MORI, compared to minus 25 for Keir Starmer's overall negative rating. So, and that's something that we see throughout all of these polls. You know, this top one, repeal Wilton, Keir Starmer's negative rating is at minus, or his disapproval rating is at minus 13, or his approval rating is at minus 13, if you like. Boris Johnson's is at minus 6. If we take another one at random, let's try this one just here, panel base. So panel base asking in a different way. There are various ways you can ask the question: approve, disapprove, satisfied, dissatisfied, favourable, unfavourable, good, bad. Panel base is asking good, bad. So in September, with panel base, 23% said that Keir Starmer's performance is good. 39% said he was bad. That gave him a net negative approval rating of minus 16. On the same poll for Boris Johnson, with panel base, good, bad, he's at 33% good, 42% bad, and an overall negative rating of minus 9. Not as negative with panel base as the minus 16 that Sir Keir Starmer had. And that's the case throughout the polls, you know, through September, and throughout the past several months, that Sir Keir Starmer is doing worse than Boris Johnson in terms of overall approval and disapproval. In terms of asking who would be the preferred Prime Minister as well, so this is another way that you can sort of gauge opinion about the two party leaders. We see that Boris Johnson continues to be preferred in terms of Prime Minister against Keir Starmer. So this is Boris Johnson's column just here. This is Keir Starmer's column just here. You see that in every poll, Boris Johnson has a lead in September in terms of who the public prefers as Prime Minister out of those two politicians. The biggest lead is their 13th September with repeal Wilton. They give Boris Johnson a 17% lead in terms of who the public would prefer for their Prime Minister. But even like the lowest polls, this is YouGov just here, has Boris Johnson with a 5% lead in terms of who is preferred for the Prime Minister. So, however you gauge your opinion about the two party leaders, Boris Johnson continues to be more popular, although he's not particularly going through a phase of unpopularity, but compared to Sir Keir Starmer, Boris Johnson remains, you know, more popular. Nicola Sturgeon is beginning to get a little bit more unpopular as well, seemingly up in Scotland. So this is looking at approval and disapproval for Nicola Sturgeon. Notice that up to like the end of July just here, Nicola Sturgeon is basically quite popular. Most of her approval ratings are in the green. Well, there is that poll just there, Ipsos MORI, that has on minus 18. But that looks a little bit of an outlier within the rest of the green. So I think we say up to like the end of July, Nicola was pretty popular, was more popular than any of the other party leaders, given that she does have a positive approval rating up to the end of July. Since then, since around the beginning of August, it does look as though she's started to become a little bit more unpopular as well. There is that one poll just there, Opinium, which does give her a 1% positive approval rating, but generally you see the red is increasing for Nicola Sturgeon. So it looks like she is also, after being through a very prolonged period of popularity, does look as though she is also starting to get just a little bit more unpopular as well, interestingly. However, the SNP's overall rating is holding up well. This is how, voting intention is looking for Scotland. And you can see that the SNP, which is this yellow line just here, continues to defy gravity, continue to sit at around 45 to 50% of the vote. So SNP still very, very, very popular up in Scotland, with the Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats and Green trailing a long way behind. Conservatives in second place, Labour in third place. Of course, Labour suffered an absolute catastrophe in Scotland in 2015, where they was completely wiped out in the 2015 general election, and they have not recovered. And until they do, it's going to be very, very difficult for Labour to get a majority to win enough seats across England and Wales to be able to form a majority without the recovery in Scotland. So whilst the SNP continue to defy gravity across Scotland and have this very, very long run of extraordinary popularity, really, until that ends and Labour sort of gets their position back as being at least in contention of Scotland, it will be very, very difficult for Labour to be able to form a majority government. This is how overall voting intention is looking. This is from Wikipedia from the general election right way through to present. So polls you've just been looking at actually stop at the end of September. This takes us right up to the present, so you can see that initially Conservatives have a huge lead in the opening months of 2020. Labour way down here under 30%, Conservatives over 50%. That's as the pandemic is kicking off. Through last winter, the polls really did narrow a lot, and we actually saw Labour with some leads in the polls through last winter. Basically, Labour and Conservatives reached parity. During this spring and summer, the Conservatives have widened the lead. That's as the vaccine rollout happened, of course, very latest. So we did have like a narrowing, not really much of a lift up in the Labour vote share. Actually, it's more of just a decline in the Conservative vote share. But the very latest, actually up to present, is that the Conservatives might be starting to lift up a little bit, whereas Labour sort of flatlining away. We've got the Liberal Democrats, Green, and SNP. Down here, of course. That Conservative leader is defying government approval, so we'll just end with that. So this is the YouGov tracker, and you can see that the government overall is becoming more unpopular. So the current position in terms of government approval has 53% disapproving of the government and only 26% approving of the government. So the government is getting more unpopular. Of course, there's all sorts going on: petrol, petrol shortages, driver shortages, inflation beginning to lift up. All sorts of things are happening. An energy crisis perhaps around the corner, and so it's hardly surprising that the government is getting more unpopular at the moment, and that's quite a big gap now, but not as big as it was. It's basically back to where it was back in the winter, actually, around here. It's in a very similar situation to what we saw back in the winter in terms of government unpopularity, but it's nowhere near where it was, as Boris Johnson takes over from Theresa May, which was 70% disapproval and just 10% approval. Theresa May's government really was extraordinarily unpopular by the end of it. So we don't see those kind of figures, but we do see clearly that the government is becoming, Boris Johnson's government is becoming more unpopular at the moment, and I would suspect that's probably going to continue over the next few months. I'm not sure that's particularly out of the ordinary for midterm in a parliament. Generally, governments are quite unpopular at the best of times, but I wouldn't think the government would want to see that getting much worse. I would think they'll hope, that won't get a great deal worse. If it starts going to like 60-20 disapprove to approve, then I think that will be a little bit worrying. And clearly Boris Johnson is like the most popular factor of the government at most. But clearly Boris Johnson, if we look at those approval and disapproval ratings, that's holding up the overall lead for the Conservatives. So, the Conservatives can be a pretty, let's go back here, the Conservatives can be a pretty ruthless bunch with their leaders, and if they're not delivering the goods, they get dispatched, as we saw with Theresa May, and we've seen several times over the years that they sort of throw their leader under the bus if they're not performing. There's no danger of that at the moment. I can tell you that, because clearly Boris Johnson is the one factor that is holding up the overall, the overall Conservative lead, and also Keir Starmer's unpopularity as well will have quite a impact on that. But clearly Boris is more popular than the government that he leads overall. And while that remains the case, I don't think there's much danger to him. But of course, that can change on a sixpence. Opinion can change on a sixpence. Just because he is leading Keir Starmer at the moment in terms of approval and disapproval does not mean that will necessarily be the case in the coming months. And if he does start getting very unpopular, and he does become more unpopular than the government he's leading and the Conservative lead craters, then that will start to get a little bit more serious for him. But at the moment, I don't think he has. I don't think he has all that much to worry about in terms of the Conservatives sort of throwing him under the bus. But he'll be a little bit concerned, but if the government that he leads gets any more unpopular, and especially if Keir Starmer starts to get a bit of a revival going. I think for Labour that is the critical issue. What is going wrong, with Keir's overall popularity with the public? Why doesn't the public why aren't they sort of giving him at least a hearing? I think that is a little bit of a concern for the Labour. Well, it's more than a little bit. It's a major concern for the Labour Party, because generally at this point in the parliamentary cycle and with everything else that's going on, you'd expect the leader of the opposition to be much more popular, I think, than we see here. So that, I think, is a concern for Labour. Right, okay, so that's it for this month's opinion poll tracker video. We'll do it again next month. It'll be interesting to see what happens, over the next few weeks as we go in towards the end of the autumn and in towards the winter. Will the Conservative lose their predicted majority? Will we start seeing a hung parliament becoming the favoured outcome? We'll see over the next month or two. I would not be surprised if that did happen, but we'll see. Right, okay, if you enjoyed this, this video, then please like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. And for this October 2021 opinion poll general election tracker predictive video, that's all for now. And thanks for watching.